There's some assembly people.
No.
Just the date. Okay.
Well, we have 10. But a couple are not going to be here. 3 are not going to be here. All right. That's still the new math, right? 7 and 3.
Yeah. You carry the one.
Okay. Can I have all your attention, please? Can I have your attention, please? Oh, okay.
Power on. Bluetooth, stereo, Bluetooth, connected.
Okay, there we go, everybody. If you'll all stand, my husband's going to lead us in the prayer, and then Ron Johnson's got a report he'd like to do, and then he's going to lead us in the pledge, and the flag is behind most of you there. Okay.
Lord, it's been said that self-government only works for people who can govern themselves, Lord. We just ask for your grace now to be upon us, Lord. We can have our differences, Lord, but help us not to be cruel or unkind to each other. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Ron, do you want to come up here?
No, let's do the pledge, and then I'd just like a minute.
Okay, all right.
Flags on the wall here, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who work for it.
Okay, Ron, go ahead.
And I've got a strong voice. I'm going to tell you what, the Lord has given me a strong voice because the Lord has given me strong friends. I'm here tonight among some of our closest friends and family, and I want to thank you for the prayers, and I want to tell you it was those prayers of my friends and my family that have sustained me, they sustained my wife Janet, and they will sustain me forward. I had a tremendous experience with the Lord through this whole process. It's not over yet. One of these days I'll share it with you, but I just wanted to thank you all for your prayers. Your prayers is why I'm here today, and why I'll be here tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Okay, so the format tonight is that we as a club, are going to ask each one of the candidates, and we have listed the candidates according to districts, starting with District 7, and then alphabetical according to their last name within that district. And we're going to ask them 3 questions. The first question is, who am I? And they can have 2 to 3 minutes to say. The next question is, what 2 bills am I going to pre-file if I am elected? And the last question is a yes or no question. Everybody hear that? Yes or no? Okay. The question is, do I support the binding caucus? Yes or no? If I am in the Republican majority, does that change my opinion, or is my answer the same? Okay? So, I'm going to start with Lynn. I think we have to get up here maybe by where you go. So that's okay.
So much for my notes, but I guess I have to introduce myself, and I know who I am, so I'm good. So my name is Lynn Gattis, and I was raised up north in the interior, Glen Allen, Golcana area. Went to high school in Cordova, and then spent some time over in Dillingham, and then spent about the last 30 plus years in Wasilla. So I've been at the same place. Actually, that's not true. I have a house down at the end of the runway, maybe a quarter of a mile away. I was in for 10 years, and then another 20 plus years in the present house. My parents were homesteaders and school teachers, and essentially I was taught to have that can-do spirit. Get out there, roll your sleeves up. You can do anything and be anything you want. And quite frankly, I think that's what I've been able to do. Pipeline came about the time I graduated from high school, and it was an amazing state. I'm running to make it that same amazing state. We have a lot of opportunities, and I plan to run to be able to help the governor. Some of you know that I was on the school board with him, and we did some, what I think, amazing things here on the school board. A lot of you folks are homeschoolers. I homeschooled my kids, and I also had the same budgets as the current governor when he was a senator and I was in the House. We know that we're spending more than we have, so we need to go there and make sure that we do the same thing with our own family budgets that we would do with the state budget. It seems so simple. That being said, I thank you for putting this program on. Thanks you guys for taking your time out on a Thursday night. Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they were going to ask a question. I didn't know how the. So you guys, pay attention here. Two bills that I'm going to would file would be bills that take away laws, that take away restrictions. And so what specific ones? I'm thinking of a lot of them. As a farmer, I tell you, I got a lot of restrictions that they have. I don't really want to throw all of them out right now, but you know, there are things that this state can do a lot better if, quite frankly, the state gets out of our way. So with that, I have more than two.
Okay, all right.
And then should I answer the other ones?
Yes.
So the next question is, will you join a binding caucus? Am I right?
Are you in support of a
Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you in support of a binding caucus? Pay attention, guys. I am not. I've seen what has happened here. When I was in the legislature, I think it really comes down to leadership and what you've all agreed upon, and it's a tough road to put out a budget. So I do know that. I know nobody's happy with the budget. I certainly haven't. Next question.
Yes, if you are in the Republican majority, does that change your position?
I guess it depends on who's the leadership and who the Republican majority and what we gathered around and agreed on. I see people in this room that I agree on, and I would go along with them. But there are also other people that are like, no, we're going to talk about that, or if we're going to do that, I can't join it. So it all depends on the leadership.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
This works, I guess. Hi, my name is Christopher Kurka. I'm a third-generation Alaskan. I got to come tonight with my spectacular wife over there in the corner, at the back, and our four beautiful sons, Justice, Samuel, Finney, and Titus, sitting at the table in there in the back. I'm very blessed that I've got to live in the state and be born in the state. And I'm running because I'm deeply disturbed about, the direction our state's going. I don't know that we have a future the way our legislature's been running. We have so many, and I use the word feckless because it's so appropriate, Republican politicians who ran the coattails of our governor. We finally have a governor who is conservative and pushing a conservative agenda in his campaign and trying to follow through in the first couple sessions. We have so many legislators that ran on his coattails and turned around and stabbed him in the back. Ran on the same issue, stabbed him in the back. And it just makes me sick. And if you want an ordinary politician, if you want a conventional politician, then vote for somebody else.
The two bills you would pre-file.
So that is very tough because I care about a lot of issues. Well, I'll talk about one that's never been tried before.
Okay.
In our state constitution, it says that the right to privacy is recognized and shall not be infringed. And then it proceeds to say that this section shall be implemented by the legislature. And what's happened is that our courts in the state have taken that language and said, oh, well, a right to privacy is fundamental. And therefore, a right to abortion is fundamental, and it's one of the most basic constitutional rights you can have. And so all the decades of leftist pro-abortion case law that we have in the state is built on a foundation that the right to privacy in our state constitution applies to abortion. But the Constitution very clearly says this section shall be implemented by the legislature. And so one of the bills I'd like to see put forward is a bill to remove abortion from the jurisdiction of the court. That's actually a separate strategy. To redefine the right to privacy or correct the right to privacy definition the courts have been using, but to remove abortion. That can be done through either a simple bill that directly targets abortion or an omnibus privacy bill, which is probably the direction I would go, that would deal with privacy on a bunch of different fronts, and then limit the court on the definition of privacy in terms of the abortion. It is absurd to think that privacy means I can kill my own kid. You know, we don't say when you're in your privacy you can abuse your wife or your kids. That's absurd. The second bill, again, this is tough because there's just so many issues. Well, I've already committed to co-sponsoring or sponsoring, depending on who's there first, Senator Mike Shower's effort to abolish the binding caucus. So that'll be right up there.
So then, the last question, maybe I don't need to ask.
No, yeah, I oppose the binding caucus, and on the other front, I will be joining the Republican caucus, whether it's the majority or minority, but I will not be making a commitment, a blind commitment, to vote how they want. If that means I'm in the broom closet, then so be it. But I'm certainly not going to vote for Democrat-controlled leadership of the legislature.
Okay, these were your District 7 candidates, and so you will have the opportunity to vote for them in the primary on August 18th, as you will on all of the candidates. We have 5 different districts in the valley, and each one of them have a Republican opponent. This is what you're looking at. So if you reside in District 7, those are your 2 candidates that you will need to choose from for your ballot on August 18th. Okay, the next one is District 8, and Kevin, you're first.
Hello everyone, my name's Kevin McCabe. I'm running for House District 8. Most of you know me. My lovely wife, Lynn, probably you know her better than me because she's way smarter and she's been around a whole lot. Republican women's meetings a whole lot more. I'd like to thank you for holding this and for allowing us to come speak. I certainly appreciate it. Oh, sorry. I don't like to hear myself talk. That's why I do that. So I grew up in northern Minnesota, joined the Coast Guard when I was 17. I spent 20 years in one day in the Coast Guard, which was a real blast. I had a good time. 17 years of that I spent in Kodiak, flying C-130s as a mechanic and a flight engineer. And I got out of the Coast Guard, worked for several different airlines, one of which was the old Southern Air Transport, the CIA airline. And I currently work for a company called Atlas. I'm a worldwide 747 pilots. I've seen a lot of cultures, a lot of different methods of doing things, different methods of governance, especially in places like China and that sort of thing. Frankly, I'm running because my dad told me something a long time ago that maybe many of you have already heard. But he said if you identify a problem, you need to identify the solutions as well. And if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I've identified a problem, which I assume many of you have, and I think the problem is that Juneau is broken. There's 60 wildly disparate opinions down there, and there's no leadership to bring them together. Or the leadership that we should have has not been able to matriculate or to become the leadership. So I intend to go down there and become a citizen statesman. This isn't a job for me. I'm not going to be there for the rest of my life or even more time than it takes to go down there and try to help solve what I see as the problem. Two bills. The first one, I think I would repeal SB 26 in its entirety. I think that was the biggest fraud perpetrated on the people of Alaska, changing the PFD from a mere transfer to an appropriation. And I think the people need to be given the ability to vote on what is essentially theirs. And that's the first bill that I would repeal. The second one, I agree with Christopher. I would support any bill that would repeal the binding caucus or make it illegal, there is no possible way that I would ever sell my vote for something that I have not read. It's just, it's not fair to my constituents, it's not fair to Alaskans, it's not fair to the people that sent me down there. We need to be able to read before we vote. So the binding caucus to me is a non-starter. And I think that probably answers the third one too, right?
Question 2 and 3 at the same time.
Hi, I'm Representative Mark Newman. I live in Big Lake. I got to Big Lake in 1981 as a young man. Got married in 1983 and still living on the same piece of dirt in Big Lake. So I guess I've been out there in District 8 in that big area for almost 40 years now. I watched that community grow, and not just that part of the community, but the state as a whole as a state legislator, and it's been enjoyable. I got into this back in 2004 when Frank Murkowski was the governor, and he wanted to spend a permanent fund dividend on our state. And I didn't think it was right. And I had my own little woodworking shop. I worked as a professional mechanic for Fisher's Fuel. Then I had my own professional woodworking shop as a custom woodworker. And I watched Frank Murkowski say that he wanted to use the permanent fund dividend to fund government, and I didn't agree with that. And he wanted to form a group of 55 people up in Fairbanks to go up there and talk about that. And I whipped out my little notebook and wrote down a few sentences in pencil. I was a homeschool dad, a small business owner, lived in the Big Lake area, and I was interested in this subject. What I found out is that most of the people were appointed there were bureaucrats that already had their mind made up. And it's where I first found out is where's the voice of the people? And one thing that I have always committed to do is to be the voice of the people when I am on the floor of the House of Representatives. I know that I will always have my view. Unfortunately, the view of me and the people in my district have always matched up very well. But I can assure you that I will be your voice, not Mark Newman's voice. That is my commitment to you. I get to be my voice when I walk behind that voting curtain and I get to vote myself. But my commitment to you when I raise my hand is to be your voice and your representative in Juneau. That's my commitment to you. So that's kind of who I am. What bills would we introduce? You know, I think the governor's got two of the best bills that we can be doing right now, and I think that he's probably got the power and the people to push it. And that would be, again, a distribution of a full permanent fund dividend and a constitutional spending cap, a limit. That's actually enforceable. That's the only way we're going to get control of this budget, is control of growth. So probably those two bills. Although I have been working with Ledge Legal on a bill that actually I was going to have drafted and filed this year that would say that ADA and the Alaska Railroad are state entities. And I found out that I didn't need to do that. It has to go down with some information. Again, being a member of the minority, we don't have any power. We're not on the budget. So I spent a large part of my time trying to find solutions. We go down to Juneau, and there's a lot of confusion goes on down there because we don't have the tools that we need. So I've been trying to find those tools, working with the Dunleavy administration and its commissioners to do that. I was able to find out, so I want to talk to Bill about this, he's on ADA, or to Dan. We can lower the cost of Ambler Road Project, Alaska Railroad, some of these other major projects, economic development projects in the state by easily over 25%, according to Mark Davis, probably one of the smartest guys over there at ADA as far as turning our resources into jobs. This is a big deal. This is a big deal when it comes into turning our resources into jobs, and that's what we need to do. There's two ways that we can fund our budget. We can continue to go into people's pockets, which is a never-ending game, or we can diversify our economy, which can follow Governor Dunleavy's lead on that. It's something that him and I have always felt strongly at. In fact, I worked, the Western Valley delegation is all very strongly at economic development. We get it. It's diversifying this economy. Oil used to be 90% of our revenue. Oil revenue this last year was less than $400 million. It used to be around the $2 billion mark. That's a big deficit there to try and fill. We need to diversify our economy. We need to find new ways to turn our resources into jobs. That takes economic development. That's always been my goal, and that's where I'm going to continue to work towards. Binding caucuses can work, but I can tell you the ones that I've seen in the past certainly don't. what the Senate has done is just terrible. You know, if you're trying to put together a budget in 90 days and get generally 27 or 30 people, or at least 21 people to agree on that, it turns into a Christmas tree. I'm not signing unless I sign on the line. And it depends on who your leadership is. When Mike Chenault was there, that wasn't the problem. When Kathy Gies was there, let me tell you, that's a problem. She had absolutely no respect for those people in the Senate. And it depends on who they are and what they are and how they treat the people in there. Hopefully we're going to work to have some good Republicans there that are going to stay in the majority and continue to caucus with Republicans and act like Republicans, conservative, fiscal Republicans, and definitely would certainly like to support them and the rest of my group going forward. But we all have to make sure we get out there and do our part and make sure we get the conservative, fiscal Republicans that can work together with the Duncan administration to turn our resources into jobs.
Oh, you're fine.
So anyway, we have 2 more events coming up. As probably a lot of you know, and we will have a report here later on in the program. Palmer is picking up the ball to have a 4th of July celebration in Palmer since, Stu, cover your ears, Stu. For those of you who don't know, Stu and, oh yeah, I see the, you guys back there too from Wasilla. So anyway, because Bert said no, we do have some people that are going to pick up the ball, and so we are going to have a celebration July 3rd and 4th in Palmer. And you'll report later, Jason, but what I should do now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass out some clipboards. So all of you that clapped your hands, and I'm excited about it coming to Palmer. We need to have some volunteers. We're going to have a booth, and so we need some volunteers for that. And then, as you know, Republican women are known for raising money, right? Well, we're not going to take up an offering collection tonight, but we do have some sign-up sheets for our chili feed, which will be August 7th at the depot. And Senator Wilson is here. He won last year. He has already told me that he is going to enter again this year, so he's sending the mark pretty high. So anyway, we're going to pass around some clipboards for you to sign up and volunteer for any of those things, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, and the next one is District 9. Sit there or stand or?
Actually, I took notes. I've been known to talk a little bit longer when I start getting on the stump, so I want to keep on time. I timed myself in 2 minutes, 47 seconds. So I'm LD Howard. I'm running to be your representative for House District 9. The reason I'm running, I've seen an erosion of morals, responsibility, and freedoms from our government. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. The people of Alaska deserve better. Many times we elect politicians only to have them go to Juneau and forget where they came from and who they represent. We elect them to be our voice, and instead they represent small interests and big donors. They become politicians instead of what they should be as representatives, with the sole mission of speaking for the people of their districts and their interests. I'm no politician. I'm a small business owner. I have a family with my wife of 16 years, Sarah, my 2 teenage children, Porter and Savannah. I want to protect the future for our children. I think that's incredibly important, that they need to have the same chances we had. They need to have the same opportunities we had. I will bring the voice and values of the people of the District 9 to Juneau and fight for what's right. I will fight and promote small business growth. I've seen the danger we're in. I run a small business. I see the effects of what happened with COVID. And each business has different parts of that. Mine is actually not a common thing. It wasn't the fact of being shut down, it was the fact of getting more inventory. I can't get inventory now. And so I'm down to about 20%. And if something doesn't change with shipping and with firearms, I run a gun store, things are gonna get tough. Things are gonna get rough. And the fact that now we're getting our PFD in July and it's not near the amount it should be, that was gonna bail us out. People usually buy guns and other stuff like that and other necessities they have for hunting season. It's not gonna happen. So I do see the struggles of small business. I see it every day. My goals in Juneau are to reduce the size of government and its spending, oppose any and all new taxes, protect our freedoms guaranteed by the Bill of Rights and the state's constitution, and require the state to honor the full permanent fund dividend. I also take any opportunity to encourage diversity in our economy. I think we have so many other things we could be doing so that we're not standing on 3 legs on a table of our economy. We need more legs to prop up this table, so if we have issues that we're having with oil right now, or tourism or fishing, then we don't see the crash we're looking at coming, in my opinion, coming October, November, December. It's scary. It truly is scary. What sets me apart from the rest is I'm driven by my principles and my very solid core belief that I won't go there and be a public servant. I already said I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. I will not abandon the people of District 9 for political expediency. The other thing I want to focus on too would be we live in a new era of communications. There's no reason that our legislators shouldn't be communicating everything to us at all times. We have several different platforms. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have email, we have YouTube. We need to be proactive as Republicans. We need to stop being reactive. How many times do we see that sometimes that we're supposed to call in and make public testimony or public comment, that it's unorganized, there's no coherency, there needs to be, the legislation needs to get a hold, and actually my senator does a great job of this, Mike Shower. We need to hold constant briefings of what's coming in and out of committees. We need to hold constant briefings on what's going on, and then have our constituents with their call list and get active. We have to be active. We have to fight. That is the only way we're going to overcome a lot of what's going on in Juneau. One of the big things I live my life by, and it's been kind of a John Wayne thing. I'm a big John Wayne fan. My son's middle name's Wayne for a reason. Is may no man utter words he's unwilling to stand by. Everything I say, everything I project is who I am. I don't change. I don't. So, okay. 2 bills I pre-file. Well, we obviously hit the binding caucus. I trust Senator Shower do a great job with that. I know with David Eastman and Chris, abortion will definitely be top of the list there, which I wholeheartedly support. Conception is excuse me, life and conception. Sorry, I wholeheartedly support that. I think the 2 that I think are really incredibly important outside of what they're doing is the first one's voter integrity. I've seen the lack of it. I've seen what mail-in ballots do. I've seen a governor who whips out her executive pin with such impunity, knowing that you can't do anything about it. I've seen votes of having plenty of people there and plenty of voters there, and obviously it would have not passed or passed, and it goes the other way. There's no accountability. We need integrity in our government. We need to know our votes count, and that way we can combat bad bills. We can combat bad politicians and combat other Republicans that we're dealing with now who do not stick to the party platform. It's obvious. The second one I would do would be another part of integrity. I believe this state needs an empowered inspector general. I think we need someone who is nonpartisan, completely empowered, that has auditing powers and enforcement powers to figure out where this money is going and why. We need to have an understanding of why we're broke, why we're spending so much money still, even though we know we don't have it. When it's in our lives with COVID and with everything else like that, I don't just keep spending the way I was prior when I was selling at Christmas time and guns were flying off the shelf. Right now, I'm lucky just to keep the lights on. And for some reason, our government feels it's time to spend more and keep adding to the budget and try to recall our governor over a 6% cut. That is asinine. I will be there to support cutting spending in government. And do you want the majority in binding?
Yeah.
So obviously I'm against the binding caucus. And the majority caucus, I will caucus with Republicans, and I'll preface this as the same thing, as long as they adhere strictly to the party platform.
When we sent out the notices, there were two candidates that told us they were not going to be here tonight. And one was George Rauscher, and the other one is Alex from District 11. But we have, Janet's going to, George is on the phone. So, come on, George.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Valley women for this night, and I wish I could be there. But who's George? I have been in Alaska since the mid-70s. I was raised Catholic. My folks were John Birchers. I rode a motorcycle up here, and when I landed, I joined the Southern Baptist Fellowship and then the Lazy Mountain Bible Church. I was saved thanks to the Lord sending Billy Graham to Anchorage back in the 80s. Since then, I've helped form a church lately with Charlie Overby around 2005, where I attend now, which is called the Sutton Bible Church. I sat on the Sutton Community Council for 12 years. I was chairman of the council for 4 years. I supporting the Wishbone Project while I was chairman. I've worked with Franklin Graham and Samaritan's Purse in Indonesia and Haiti. I've worked on projects all over the state of Alaska, including the Wounded Warrior Project at Lake Clark, built a church and 5 homes for the burned out inhabitants of Hoover Bay, and many other projects with Samaritan's Purse here in Alaska. I was also one of the first missionaries to serve in Russia right after Perestroika in '92. I worked in the oil field and as a carpenter before starting a business working on log houses in '92. I was a delegate to the National Convention in 2012 and again in 2020, this year. I was elected to serve in the State House in 2016. I've been one of the few legislators who have written legislation to protect our right to bear arms. I've written a resolution for reciprocity between states to carry concealed weapons. Also, wrote a bill that people who have had a defensive display of a weapon on their own property cannot be taken to court because they intimidated somebody. I also co-sponsored a bill to allow 18-year-olds the right to purchase a handgun. None had been heard because the Democrat-led majority has never chosen to take them out of the drawer. During my time in office, I wrote this year the heartbeat bill for the State House. I worked to find 12 names to co-sponsor it and a woman to carry it on the House floor. Representative Vance asked if she could carry it for me, and she brought another 6 co-sponsors for a total of 18 representatives on the day we filed it. Together we found the last 3 votes needed to have that bill passed on the floor of the House with 21 votes. My office signed the rights over to her, and she carried it in the House, and I co-sponsored it. And it should have passed this year, but we weren't in the majority, and we never had the bill heard. It never was taken out of committee by the co-chairs of Health and Social Services. So we must hold a majority this year in Juneau to gain any ground here. Some of the other legislation I've written, a bill to move the legislature out of Juneau, a constitutional amendment to cap the budget, a bill to have in God we trust printed in all state buildings, one to repeal a certificate of need, one to stop paid transgender surgeries, another stating the income tax must go before the people on a ballot measure, and other needed pieces of legislation. I sit on resources. I sit on energy, and I sit on military and veterans affairs, I'm running again because I'd like to continue sitting in my seat, serving the people the way I have. I'm proud of my conservative voting record, voting against voted budgets and against growing government, and my stand on the Second Amendment rights. And I look forward to serving again for 2 more years.
Opinion on binding caucus and pre-filed bills?
Do you want to talk
Okay,
about
you have questions ahead.
pre-filed bills and the binding caucus?
Sure. 2 of the bills I would like to file. A constitutional amendment to cap the budget, which is the only way this state will be able to live within its means. Constitutional amendment to cap the budget is a necessity. And second would be a bill to do away with the massive amenities given to the majority. Basically doing away with the majority over minority power trip, allowing each representative then the ability to represent their district and this state equally without what I call silencing of the land, so to speak. And I'll be speaking more of that legislation on July 6th during the Facebook invite, which is coming up. The binding caucuses, I agree with the binding caucus legislation that Senator Shower is trying to pass, and I will vote yes to pass it. Not being a binding caucus, though, it has allowed me the time to head up the legislative prison ministries at Lemon Creek, and bringing the word to God to over 60 inmates there. And that has been a very important ministry while we're down in Juneau. But that said, the question is also, will I join a binding majority caucus this year? Yes. Because the only way to have that bill heard in committee is if the controlling majority will hear it. And that controlling majority should also have the majority of the seats in those committees that hear it to pass it out of committee. And I will only join it if that binding majority is a Republican-led majority that would hear it. And it stands now that majority.
George, your 5 minutes are up.
Okay, that binding majority would be needed to pass it out of the floor.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
Okay, so for District 10, for
David Eastman, George not long. You know the 3 questions?
Thank you very much, Edna. If I don't answer them, please remind me.
Okay, I will.
David Eastman, and
I'm not bashful.
no, you're not. Very privileged to represent a big part of the Western Sioux in Juneau today, and also very grateful to be joined by my wife and very young son here, just turned 4 months old. That's my wife Jennifer, Timothy with her, and as a dad. Our 4 kids were all born in Wasilla, and that leads me to take a long-term view on a lot of things. And I'm looking at questions like, what are my kids going to do when they're 20s? Where are they going to be? Are there going to be jobs for them here in Alaska? Are they going to have and enjoy the same rights, freedoms, and opportunities that Jennifer and I enjoy, which we were very blessed. We want to pass on those blessings and the freedoms that we have to our kids. So that's a big part of why I went down to Juneau this year, and why as a family we've been down there every other year. Now, I didn't start in Alaska. I was unsuccessful lobbying my parents to move to Alaska, starting in about kindergarten. The fish are bigger here. I knew that because my uncle always brought them back every summer, and that was enough reason for me. And being an unsuccessful lobbyist, decided to join the Army. And the Army after West Point sent me up here, got to come up here on their dime, which was great. Spent a number of years at Fort Richardson, became J-Bear, served on the active side of things for a number of years, then on the reserves for a little while, and then as a civilian on J-Bear from 2013 to 2015. Now, as I look out at the landscape today, and this hasn't changed a terrible lot since I was in your seat and not elected, and thinking about how we can get a better Alaska. it hasn't changed so much because Juneau hasn't changed so much. And right now, Juneau is looking at this table of folks, myself on it, and saying, all right, who's going to be elected, and how can we co-opt them so that they represent us? As Juneau wants to be represented, and whether you're represented or not, well, as long as they're represented, they're happy. And if they're not, then they will be looking, eagerly looking for our representatives to speak on their behalf. We have 6 now, and after redistricting, we will have 7. And that's a lot of voices that should be speaking up for the values that all of us in this room hold and are important to the people of the Mat-Su. The binding caucus works for Juneau, and that's all it works for. And it will never work for the Mat-Su, certainly not the people that I represent. One of the reasons that it will never work is because the whole idea of a binding caucus is to bind you so that you don't vote the way you normally would. That's why they call it a binding caucus. So if you accurately represent your district, in my case I have a conservative district and I represent that district, they are binding me to not represent the district that I was elected to represent. And if you do the math, you'll realize that Anchorage will always have more members in a caucus than we will here. Even when we get 7, they will still have more. And if you have to vote with the caucus, that means Anchorage is driving the train and we're along for the ride. And that is not fair to the people I represent. It's not fair to my kids. So I cannot be, in good conscience, a representative of either Anchorage or Juneau. And so not running to represent them. And 2 bills that I will be looking at. First, I would say, I don't think in most cases it's all important who files a bill. I think you want to look at, after August 18th, who's likely to be elected, and you want to figure out, all right, here's an issue, let's come together on it, let's figure out the best person to run that bill. 2 bills that I think are very important, which I would love to be a part of. One, the people need a voice on the PFD. They were denied that voice by Governor Walker. They've been denied that voice the last 4 years since Walker left now, and they deserve a right, and the legislature can give them that right. We have filed bills in the past that would allow the people a vote on what happens to the PFD. And until they have that vote, until they have that right to speak, we don't have any right to stop following the laws. We don't have any right to try and create a new system that they are not in support of, because we run and we are serving and we are elected to work on their behalf. The second bill that I would co-sponsor or sponsor, as the case may be, would be a free speech on university campuses here in Alaska bill. Because as I look out and I look at what passes for free speech right now on our campuses, it is not what I enjoyed. And I went to a military school, not a lot of freedom there, but it's not even what I enjoy. And certainly it is not the kind of environment where I would know that my kids are able to express themselves. And these are the people that are going to be running the show here in a generation. If we're training them not to exercise their free speech rights, training them to be quiet, that can hold, and that's not going to be good for the future of Alaska.
Hi, I'm Jesse Sumner. I was born out here at the old Palmer Hospital. Lifelong Alaskan resident. When I was young, we went from a trailer park to living out in Pittman with no running water, and proceeded to move every 2 years. I watched my dad build a company from nothing to reasonably successful, and he was quite successful. And he got there not through handouts, but through hard work. My brother and I, we worked for the company our entire lives. Although I did go to college, got a degree in physics, came back. It was right around the housing crash, and but we still decided we would buy him out. And I don't know if anybody knows what a construction company consists of, but you basically have a truck, a couple of tools, a name, and I had a big pile of debt. And so I think that first year we maybe did one house or two, And we built up from there and do over $6 million a year in sales. So that's a contribution to the local economy, and happy to help house plenty of folks out here in the valley. The reason I decided to run is because I don't want people to be confused about what the conversation is. I'm not going to tell people that we're going to be able to take $10, split it 20 ways, and everybody's going to get $1. If we do not cut spending, then the PFD is going to be gone, and we're going to have a tax. Simply the spending is the tax. Government does not produce things. So any dollar that's being spent is either a dollar that was taxed, is being taxed, or will be taxed. And that's just reality. When we have a large state, we're going to have to find 21 people that can agree to reduce the budget and find reasonable accommodation. And if we can't do that, there's going to be 21 other people that are going to do it, and they're going to pull money out of the Mat-Su. It's already happening, actually. The PFD cuts are effectively a tax. That comes out on an equal per capita basis, but state spending does not come back here on an equal per capita basis. So but that's only the beginning. So if we cannot control the spending, then it'll only be worse going forward. As far as two bills that I would pre-file, I think one of the most important things you can do as a representative is support other conservatives and their bills. I've heard a number of good bills that I would like to help move forward. Sarah Vance and I guess Judge Rauscher's wants to take credit, but the heartbeat bill I think is important to move. Also a constitutional spending cap, because while we need to cut spending now, if we don't have something in place, then someday we'll just be building up a massive spending again when we have substantial revenues, and we'll be repeating this whole process yet again. But as far as bills that I specifically would want to introduce, I would like to see a way to expedite permitting. I don't think it should take a decade plus to do anything in this state. I think that we lose a lot of potential economic opportunity by creating those barriers. I can't imagine many people would want to undertake a decade plus long process to permit when they might not even get the permit in the end. So I can't even fathom how much opportunity we've lost through that. And then also, I would like to find a way to ramp people off of Medicaid and food stamps and those sort of programs. I can't tell you how many times I've had employees that are working for me, and they'll come and they'll say, I need to work less hours, or I'm quitting. And the reason is because they're making too much money, and they're about to lose their Medicaid benefit or their food stamp benefit or what have you. And that's a barrier that's created for people to move up. And while those programs were instituted with good intentions, they are actually a poverty trap. And we need to do something about that. So, and then the binding caucus?
Yes or no?
Right. If I did it on the assembly, I would go to jail. Well, that's the truth, right? So, but I think I think you need to distinguish between a binding caucus where you're effectively selling your vote, which, I mean, let's say what it is, and a caucus in general, which is a joint venture where you've come together with hopefully 21 other people, or 20 other people at least, and you've laid out a statement of principle and where you want to be, and everyone can agree that to support each other and try to get there. So that's a different thing. But the binding caucus, I mean, if you're going to sign an agreement saying that yes, I will vote your way on all of these votes, and you'll give me committee positions, yeah, I think you probably have done something illegal there.
If you're in the Republican majority, you're still.
Will be in the Republican majority. Yes.
Is your answer the same on the binding caucus if you're in the Republican majority?
Yeah, I don't think we actually need a binding caucus. So, I mean, you can get things done. It's just going to take more work, and you're going to have to work with people, right? You know, there are a lot of different areas in the state, and I'm not going to lie. You're not going to cut every single dollar. Anchorage, I'm sure, looks at us with our troopers, and they say, well, we pay for our police. Why don't we cut that? And we would not want to cut that.
They have troopers also, and so does Juneau.
Yep. But, you know, it's going to have to be something that we work out with other areas of the state. We only have 6 representatives. So we're going to have to find an accommodation with somebody. And I think we can do it. There's actually... oh, sorry.
Sorry, I can't play favorites, okay. The last district is District 11, and Alex Feta is one of the candidates, and he's not able to be here tonight because he's working. I did send him and George the questions ahead of time. They were the only two that let us know that they were not going to be able to be here. So give me a minute here, and I will read. Alex is.
I'm one of those people that put off your glasses to read.
So. Okay. Hi, everyone. I appreciate the invitation to tonight's event. Unfortunately, my work schedule did not permit me to attend. Thankfully, I was able to provide a written statement to several questions and a brief summary of who I am. My name... My name is Alex, and I'm a husband, father, local business owner, and Palmer resident. I grew up in Big Lake, Alaska, and went to school in Arizona. I received a bachelor's degree in criminology and criminal justice and a minor in political science. My work history has been as an investigator and a federal probation officer. I also served on the Counter Drug Task Force while a member of the National Guard. However, none of those qualifications matter when it comes to politics, because who the person is and what they stand for weighs far more than what they have accomplished. At this critical point in Alaska, we need principled legislators who will do what they say. Alaskans have to figure out how to get by with reduced income these past few months, so it is unacceptable for the legislature to raise taxes in this environment. What they have, because the private sector has had to do the same. I want to be sure that I don't go over his 5 minutes, so I'm going to read the answer to the last 2 questions, and then if I have extra time, I'll go back and read the other part. Regarding 2 bills I would pre-file, first I would work with a few of the legislators who are against the binding caucus to come up with a bill to outlaw it. I watched Senator Shower's very informative presentation, and it was clear that we are the only state using this unethical caucus. Second, I would like to file a bill to prevent mass shutdowns. Second, I would file a bill to prevent the massive shutdowns of small businesses from ever happening again. Governments across the nation have acted outside of their constitutional powers in the COVID response. The rights of the individuals are not overridden because the collective bargaining fears something. Businesses should never have been forced to close. We know how to operate responsibly and safely. Lastly, on the binding caucus, I am against it completely and would oppose it whether I'm in the majority or the minority. My goal is to eliminate it so that representatives can vote how their district wants and not how leadership has coerced or bribed them. Do I still have some time? Okay, let me go back. I believe in personal freedom. I believe government is limited for a reason, and that when it must act, it should do so in the least intrusive way possible. I am for drastically cutting state spending across the board and returning money to Alaskans in the form of a full statutory PFD with back pay so the Alaskans can weather the economic storm we are entering. I will hold the line on taxes and regulations and support small businesses and entrepreneurship in our state. I will fight. You see where I am here. So I'll just go ahead and wrap this up. If you send me to Juneau, you're not sending someone who will just go along to get along. I want to be clear that a vote for Alex Feta is a vote to fight for our rights. I will not roll over and I will not join the binding caucus despite any promises or punishments. And the other candidate in that race is Delana Johnson, and we did not know ahead of time that she wasn't going to be here tonight. And so when Steve came, I gave him the questions, and did she respond back?
She didn't get back.
She didn't? Do you want to just say a couple of words on her behalf?
She meant to be here tonight, but she got in the COVID crap of travel, and she did the test at the airport. The test is quick there, but the results don't come back, so she's quarantined at home. She fully expected she was going to make it. She gets the call today, but she just didn't get here.
So everybody here, that, okay? All righty. Well, let's give a round of applause to all the candidates. So let me remind the candidates that we expect you to all make chili, or you or your spouse or your child or whoever you can coerce into making chili for the chili feed. We can't let Senator Wilson just walk off with another trophy without some kind of competition. After all, he is from Wasilla, you know, so. And the other thing is when Jason's going to talk to us about the Valley Freedom Festival that's going to take place in Palmer, and we will have a booth, and so we would like to give you, each one of you, an opportunity to spend a couple hours in the booth. You can bring your campaign literature, and we're going to be hard-nosed about this. If you don't take a 2-hour period in the booth, your stuff's not going up. Okay? Come on, you guys, you should be happy about that. So, Jason, you want to before? We're drawing some lines in the sand this year. Maybe you don't want to be up here. You may get your back to these people behind you. I didn't leave you in a very good spot.
So, I guess how we got to this Valley Freedom Fest, so everything kind of has been canceled. Everything just constantly gets canceled, and there was originally about 12 businesses when the Wasilla Parade and Mariners Picnic was canceled. They said, hey, this isn't right, we don't want this. And so we started getting together and started to come up with some ideas on what we could do. And for those of you that were on the Zoom meeting last month, we were kicking around some ideas, and it was brought up, so we let people know. And Edna graciously said, hey, Palmer will welcome you. So we filed for a permit. We've been working with them. Permit got granted last Friday. So the planning is really, we're behind the ball on this. But I think where we are right now, we have 6 parade entrants, 6 food vendors, and 27 non-food vendors. So we are looking to try to get the word out for people so that they want to sign up for the parade, because we know what the parades usually are. So there's no reason we can't get this parade to be a lot bigger and a lot more entrants. So what we're looking for is just to get the word out. I've got some flyers here. I didn't bring near enough. I didn't expect this many people here. So if you can look at this, the website is valleyfreedomfest.com. It's called the Valley Freedom Festival. It's going to take place at the MTA Event Center in Palmer. So we just want to make sure people don't get confused with the MTA, what used to be the Sports Center on the Palmer Wasilla. So it's actually being held in Palmer. It's a 2-day event. The times are from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then the parade is going to be on July 4th at 11 a.m. And it's going to be the traditional parade route in Palmer, where it's going to go down Alaska Street, in front of all the businesses, down through the Pioneer Home, through the circle, and then end in the library. So the biggest thing is we need to get the word out. So you'll see it on Facebook, so share it to all your friends so they see it. And then you click on that website if you do want to be involved, if you have a business, you want to be in the parade, if you want to have a booth, if you have a business that wants to put up a vendor booth or a food truck, you can register through that website too. There's a link there where you can register, fill out the application. The fees are really nominal. I think it's Haley. I got Haley. I should have her doing this. She's the chair of the committee. But I think it's like $15 if you're a parade entrant, $20 if you're a vendor, and then $30 if you're a food truck. So the fees are really nominal. We're just trying to recover the cost of the insurance and some of the other things that we're going to have to buy for the event. So we're not looking to make any money. But yeah, we want it to be a big community event, and that's kind of how we got there. And it's a growing process, and I think it'll be a good time. Anything I missed? No? Like I said, I'll put the flyers out. Go to the website, and if you know of anybody that wants to put a booth or be in the parade, make sure you register. And it is open. I think somebody asked, are they going to open it to political candidates to walk in? Yes. So it is.
Thank you. So now we're going to open it up to audience questions, and although I've known all of you a long time, but because somebody that I've known for 30 plus years, I promised him the first spot, and because he wanted us to open up the questions, and I said, no, we've already decided that. So Rick, if you want to come and ask your question. And
nice and simple. Thanks, Eda. All right, guys, easy question. Where do you see resource development and responsible project opportunity growth fitting into your campaign platform and your legislative priorities once you get to Juneau? And then the second part of that is, how do you plan to vote on Prop 1, which is the Alaska Fair Share Act?
Hand up the mic and let him come on record.
Yes, well, I'd be glad to go on record in saying that we gave our resource committee to the Democrats. We gave our resource committee to the Democrats the last 2 years, actually longer than that now. And I would not do that. So my platform is not to put Representative Andy Josephson and Darren Tarr as co-chairs of our resource committee again, because that is closing Alaska for business. I plan on voting against the ballot measure. I think it's a terrible idea. And if there was a long answer to that, I'm not sure what it would be. Vote no. Thank you.
So my answer is I would vote no on that for sure. As far as resource development, we already have a ton of stuff in the works. We have the rail spur extension, Port McKenzie. Why those are not further developed and actually finished, I have no clue, other than obstructionist permits. Susitna Dam, or Watana Dam is actually what it's called now, is held up for permits. Frankly, that to me would be a perfect way out of this mess that COVID has put us in. Is almost like a works project. Sorry for those of you that understand that that's kind of a Democrat thing, but we need to put people to work, frankly, and we right now our government's in the way. Too many permits. 10 years to get a permit. I happen to have done some flying up there when they were studying the birds and the ants and the owls and the frogs and the weeds and everything else up there for that dam, and the waste was incredible. Why are we doing that? We need to encourage projects such as the dam, such as the rail spur extension, such as Port McKenzie. You notice that Mayor Berkowitz changed the designation for the Port of Anchorage to the Port of Alaska. Any question why he did that? So resource development would be at the top of my campaign, and it would be at the top of my agenda in Juneau. Thanks.
So we need to reduce time to permit so we can make projects economical and open up new opportunities up here. I think if you listen to Donald Trump, you'll see that the sum total of what he's saying is globalism is ending. The United States will no longer police the seas and protect other countries' shipping between each other. There'll be no more multilateral trade agreements. There'll be bilateral, us and other countries, and we'll protect our own shipping between those countries. So there is going to be a risk premium that's attached to resource development in other places, because it will cost more to secure that and to move it out of there. And so we have a fantastic opportunity, I think, here in Alaska to develop our own resources, and we should not pass that up. I'd hate to see the Canadians get there first, and I think that we can. We have a vast wealth in the state that everyone can benefit from. So, thank you. Oh, Prop 1, I'm voting no. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we act kind of like a banana republic. We shouldn't be adjusting the taxes every couple of years. I mean, people need some sort of economic certainty to do business planning.
Excellent questions, thank you. First on Prop 1, the definite no vote. You know, the government stranglehold, the government shutdown during COVID had a really horrible impact on a lot of businesses. And so now with the massive drop in oil prices, we're going to go and squeeze the last lifeblood out of our last major industry. It's disturbing. I think it's pretty clear that the left is not about just supporting those who they think need to be supported with government funds. It's about destroying private property, it's about destroying private industries, it's about destroying businesses. Because businesses and private industry allows, it's a form of freedom, property. And so I'm definitely opposed to Prop 1. As far as resource development, I'm not as familiar with the permitting process, but I mean, 10 years to get a permit sounds quite absurd. Something I'd love to look at, not my forte of issues. My wife and I own an accounting business, and we can see the direct effect of government regulation and taxation and how it inhibits economic activity, inhibits people starting businesses, inhibits people growing businesses and hiring folks, or even being able to pay more to their employees or invest in their community. And you know, I'd love to see us. I mentioned this at one of the other previous forums. We're in a bad state, or a bad situation in the state with the economy, and we have to be the best place in the world to do business if we're going to survive. And that means changing tax policy. That means getting rid of the corporate income tax. That means getting rid of all these fees and permitting process that strangle businesses. I would like to, honestly, I would be open to looking at completely removing, just as an idea, completely removing the tax structure we have with the oil industry and going to where those royalties go directly to the permanent fund, and then we have a sales tax, so that people see the tax they're paying and it's not hidden. And let freedom ring.
I would be a definite no on ballot measure 1. I think that it's just reminiscent of what we're seeing happen with our PFD, that our legislature right now can ad hoc confiscate, tax, steal, however they see fit to spend. So I think we need to support our oil right now, especially in these times. Also, you and I also talked about why are we not using other resources we have here. We have a huge coal seam. We have half a track built. We have one of the best ports, much better than Anchorage, that we could do quite a bit of business with. Why are we not? Alaskans actually do a phenomenal job at protecting our environment and protecting our resources. Part of the problem is we allow outside interests in here to try to dictate to us what to do with our own state. And I'll actually go higher than that. We have activist judges who seem to make decisions with whichever they seem fit, not by the law. We need judges to say this is a law, this is the case, and let Alaskans dictate what happens in our state as far as our production, and not let out of state interests try to affect what we do here. So I think that we are responsible stewards. We live in this majestic state that God's given us. I think all of us respect it and we'll use it properly.
All right, well, we'll start out with no on all new taxes. How's that? And especially Prop 1. One thing that I've always been involved in is economic development. It's what I've focused on as a legislator. Very proud of the fact that one day when Senator Dan was addressing the legislature as a whole and addressed me as Mr. Resource Development, I'm proud of that. And so what I've been doing recently, again, as a member of the minority, is working with our Ledge Legal and the folks over at DNR on how do we turn these resources into jobs. It's a lot of talk to say that we need to do this, but how is it going to get done? I got to looking at the price of gravel for road projects, and the state DOT pays DNR up to $3 a yard for gravel. And it goes from this pocket to this pocket. Absolutely ridiculous. Cost of these projects go up, and that's all that does. I was going to introduce a bill that said that both Alaska Railroad and ADA are recognized as state entities, and that the price of gravel could be adjusted. I went to look at that. Come to find out that the price of that gravel is set through administrative code, and Ledge Legal came back and says you don't need a bill to do that. The administration can already do that. So I've been bringing that information to the governor, and I've had several meetings with his Commissioner of Economic Development and several others of staff, Brett Huber, as Chief of Staff, on these issues of trying to do this. What that would do on projects like Amber Road, according to Mark Davis at ADA, would reduce that up to easily on the low end 25%. The Alaska to Alberta Railroad, another 25% reductions in some of those costs by reducing those gravel costs. Many hydroelectric dams that are already approved by ADA, just ready to go to construction, waiting to make it happen. But again, particularly with Amber, why that's so important is that's right now, right at the edge of whether it's going to rock or not. And a 25%, this is hundreds of millions of dollars of reduction in the cost of this project. This makes it happen. When I brought this to Governor, he says, what are we going to do? He said, that's the one I want. And so I did that. That opens up access to a product that can go to a port across to northwestern Alaska so that we can actually have an icebreaker up there and continued more Coast Guard opportunities up in there. I also feel that we need to be taking our natural gas and converting that into synthetic fuels. I think that we can be doing it right here. Natural gas is the largest energy resource in the world. The best natural gas in the world is right here in Alaska, and some of the most largest volumes right here in Alaska and America. We could control that market with clean synthetic fuels made from a clean Alaska gas by Alaskans. I've got plans on all this. I do more than just talk. I've got plans, and I'll be able to go through any of this with anybody who'd like more information. Thank you.
Yeah, the only woman. Okay.
I guess I am. So I'm a no on Prop 1. I'm proud to say that I did vote for SB 21. And that was when we told the old oil companies, we said, you guys, we will put a tax out there, and we'll put it out there for you to bring investments into the state. We're not going to pull the rug out when we start. And of course, we had no idea that we'd have COVID and whatever. So I think it was a Prop 1 the last time when it came out on the ballot, and we said no the last time. So I'm hoping everybody gets out and says no this time. So that being said, what we're talking about is resources and how to diversify the state, whether it's roads to resources. I'm still old enough and from the interior to still say I'm going to take the new road to Fairbanks. You know, and a lot of people don't know that when I was raised, we didn't have the Parks Highway. We haven't had a new road since then. I have a farm that's on the rail extension, and I got a couple calls from people in this room that said, hey, when you go out and campaign, are you going to tell people about the money you stole? Here's what I'm going to tell you. Myself and all the other farmers, when the borough, who was the project manager, took the property, they paid us for our property. You know, that's okay, you guys. They didn't pay us above market value. Eminent domain has a particular way that works, and everybody got paid. So the answer is no. I'm not going to pay people back for money that was paid for. So I just want to bring that up in the room because there were a couple folks. I think resources, that's where it's at. We know we are a resource state, and we're big in resources, and I think we should be bullish for resources. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, so now we're going to open it up for audience questions. You have a question, Nick?
I can form it as a question.
Yeah, it has to be a question. You're not running for office, so we're not here to hear, you know, how you were raised from a small child in a village someplace and didn't have running water for 17 years.
stole my thunder. My name is Nick Brockett, and I'm not running for any office, okay? But I have educated myself for something I want to say to all of you in this room, and I will frame this as a question if you want, but I can tell you they'll say yes, 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 yes. Can you not hear it? How about that? Is that better? Anybody who's running for an office, I don't care what the office is or who you are. I don't care how long you've been here, where you were born, nothing like that. What I care about is liberty. Okay, that's the bottom line for me. All the problems I think could be fixed if we exercised our rights to liberty. And every one of you, okay, has, if you have a position, it is not a job where you come and go whenever you want, okay? It is not a career where you get rich. What it is a sacred honor and a duty, because all the power that you have has been delegated to you, not given to you, delegated to you by the people. We, the people, delegate to you. If you abuse it, we're going to yank you out of there every way we can. But that's what your job is, to use the power that the people give you. We trust you. Okay? Sometimes, what a good idea. The question is, okay, all of you, one at a time then, okay, that your primary duty is to protect the rights of the people who put you in this office.
David's like, yes, that is a first and most important duty of a legislator.
It's going to be a long time if we all have to walk up here and unravel the mic cord. So absolutely, I believe in government by the people, for the people. I believe that citizen statesmen, one of the reasons I'm running, Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty needs to be refreshed once in a while with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And frankly, it applies to legislators. If you've been in the legislature for a long time and made a career out of it, it's time to give somebody else a chance. Time for new blood, and time to give liberty a chance. That's why I'm running. Thanks, Nick.
Well, I'm sure everyone's going to say yes. But, you know, we recently did have an infringement of our rights. I did hear Chris talk about it. I didn't hear a lot of people talking about it while it was happening. And it was nationwide. I recall when the pandemic first started in China, my wife asked me if they'd ever be locking people in their houses in America like they did there, and I said that could never happen in America. But I've seen some pretty appalling things across the country. I think, and I do believe the governor managed it far better than almost anywhere else. But we should not ever be so quick to think that the government is going to have the perfect solution. Often they're just going to make the thing worse. I think they shut down half the trains in New York, so people doubled up on the rest. It's important that we let people decide their own level of risk. If somebody thinks that it's unsafe for them to go out, let them make that decision. Let them stay home. Let other people who decide that it's an acceptable level of risk go out and partake in society. And I believe if something's really serious, people are going to do the right thing, and we don't need to be forcing them. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to be quicker. Yes, absolutely. The opening words of the Alaska State Constitution say, in Article 1, Section 1, this Constitution is dedicated to the principle that all persons have a natural right to life. And it goes on about industry and basically getting the rewards of their labor. And we have so many politicians that are clamoring to take away our rights. And we see that the pre-born is denied their rights on a daily basis. We see, and with this whole COVID thing, people being denied the right to work was a direct violation of our Article 1, Section 1 of the state constitution. So it's the first priority, and the big reason why I'm running.
I think most people know I have 907 Freedom. I started it here because I saw infringements on rights and our liberties. You've seen what I've done for gun rights here, organizing borough protests and stuff like that, and helping with legislation to stop it. Then you also saw me stand up with the Black Lives Matter, talk with them, bridge the gap, because I will protect their right of freedom of speech as well. I may not agree with everything, but if the Constitution and the wheels of justice don't apply to all, they apply to none. It's that simple. If you're going to be a defender of the Constitution, it's a defender for all. The one that actually scared me the most, I was going to kind of echo what Jesse said, was we were barred our freedom of religion, the right to assemble and to worship our God as we saw fit. Never in my life would I ever thought I would have saw this in this country, and that actually scares me. It really scares me. That's why I feel the need to run. That's why I feel the need to do what I'm doing right now. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. But also I'd like to tell you what I've done to protect your rights. One of the bill that I did, it took 5 years to make sure that the rights that you have with your castle doctrine, to be able to use deadly force within your home, you now have the right to do that anywhere in Alaska where you have a right to be. It took me 5 years to get that bill passed. It was a huge Second Amendment bill. Very proud of that. Even bills as small as, where it seems small, like a pocket knife is a switchblade or any type of knife. You can carry any knife you want now. Government shouldn't be there to tell you what you can and cannot do, and I will always protect the right to personal freedoms.
Oops, I'm not going to come around. My answer is yes.
Okay.
We have judicial legislation. Matter of fact, the state Supreme Court just did a letter endorsing Black Lives Matter, basically. I read it, I was completely appalled. So what I would like to know is, would you entertain a sense of the House, and for the senators, a sense of the Senate, that really comes out after the judicial branch, all of the judicial branch, the state Supreme Court, as well as all the other judges down below them, to stop this travesty of judicial fiat over that of the legislatures?
And so what I would say is the legislature, by our constitutional framework, was designed to be the greatest branch compared to the judiciary. And we have ignored that, and the legislature is now basically providing cover for the judges to do whatever they're going to do, and the Democrats like it because what they want gets done. So as legislator, it is our responsibility to hold the judges to account to the Constitution. That's why we take the oath to the Constitution. We don't take it to the Supreme Court, we don't take it to the judges, we take it to the Constitution.
So I agree essentially with that premise, that what David just said, that the legislature has a responsibility. But don't forget as well, a good chunk of these judges are up for a renewal vote every single year. Right? So my worry would be taking that away from the people, their opportunity to vote. So we need to be careful with that. I think Senator Schauer had a bill on the appointment committee. I can't remember exactly how it went. We did discuss it at one point and talked about putting a civilian and not a lawyer on that committee to appoint judges. I think the way we do things with judges is the problem. In many other states, it's elected. The judges are elected. Not in Alaska. They're appointed and then retained. So we need to make sure that the people have a voice with the judges as well.
Well, I don't know what the question was, but it's I think it's insane that one branch of our government is selected effectively by the Bar Association. So we probably ought to apply the Janus decision to that. You have a private organization, which is effectively a trade organization that selects, elects amongst themselves 3 members of the Judicial Council, and then the Supreme Court justice is on there, and then 3 members that are appointed by the governor. And so you're always going to have a majority that's effectively controlled by the Bar Association itself. And if you think that you're going to get anything other than an expansion of court rules and increase in the total expenditure for our legal system out of that, then I think you don't understand how a monopoly works. So we need to do something about that.
Yeah, this is a huge problem that nobody talks about enough. Because essentially, under our current legal doctrine in this country, that if a judge, that basically judges are the last word when it comes to interpreting the Constitution. And effectively what that means is that we can pass any constitutional amendment we want, we can pass any law we want, and if the judge doesn't like it, they say, well, I'm going to reinterpret the Constitution over here to say, no, it means this. A prime example, even in this state, in 2005, the state Supreme Court ruled that, well, even though the people voted to put in the Constitution that marriage is between a man and a woman, we're saying that same-sex couples are exactly the same, so you have to get the benefits anyways. So we passed a constitutional amendment, and not only did they ignore it, they turned it on its head. So, unfortunately, to change the Judicial Council is going to require a constitutional amendment to fundamentally change it. It is pretty absurd. We have a private organization with a controlling interest in how our government functions. But this is an issue I've followed very closely, and they're actually, and I will be sponsoring a constitutional amendment to change the Judicial Council, number one. But there's actually some statutory changes that nobody's tried that could actually change the way we appoint district judges. They could be elected. They're not mandated in the state constitution, as well as we could include additional restrictions on how we appoint the Superior Court and the Supreme Court justices. So essentially, we could require legislative confirmation with a simple statutory change.
I agree that our judges should be appointed by the people, for the people. I believe that. I also agree with Representative Eastman said that as long as the legislature follows the Constitution, there's no need for the judges to intervene. It's that simple to me.
Well, our laws say that we're supposed to have a separation of powers. Obviously, that's not happening between the administrative, legislative, and judicial branches. What are we going to do to try and make sure that we protect the rights of the average citizen? I've continued to file a bill that was started by my friend, Representative Senator Bill Stoltz in the back of the room, which is elected Attorney General. The largest, the highest voice of the law of the land in our state. And I think that having an elected Attorney General is a good place to start with that, instead of appointed. That AG is supposed to be working for the people and not for the governor.
Well, even though I was sitting next to Mark Newman here, I didn't know he was going to steal my thunder here. I too was on state affairs with Representative Senator, I guess that's his name now, Bill Stoltz. And an elected Attorney General really is a smart idea. A lot of states do it. So I think that is a great place to start. So thank you.
Yeah, we only introduced that when I was in the Senate 30-some years ago. So.
Great minds think alike.
Where they don't want it.
All right, I'm loud, I'm fast, you guys know it, so I'm gonna rock right into this. So she gave me a little bit of leeway to talk about a couple things. You guys know that last night I had a big Facebook Live on the Binding Caucus, where we stand. I'll give you an update. So now I know it's all 49 states, because Representative Eastman has a friend back in Maryland. Remember I said I couldn't get an update from Maryland? I did, and he said they don't use it either. So I'm here to tell you folks, I have talked to 48 of the 49 states, senators in those states, and one of them via email. Nobody else does this, just little Alaska. So you've seen the live, I won't go through that again, but I wanted to give you that update that in fact, nobody else in the nation uses a binding caucus that takes away the freedom of your legislator to vote the way they believe best in accordance with the Constitution, the statutes, your district, and the state. But we do it here. So, a comment. I heard some comments here, several legislators, and some folks talked about would they join the binding caucus. And the answer was no from everybody. Kind of the popular thing right now. It makes sense when you look at the data. It's undeniable. You don't have a legal, moral, ethical reason to have a binding caucus that does not pass the common sense test. And I would argue that is both unethical and it is illegal. And many states have said that, including unconstitutional. However, there were some answers that, and this is a problem, I'm going to tell you this. Some of the answers were, well, if it was a Republican, majority, then I'll join it. And it depends on who's in charge, and that's the problem, folks. It depends on who's in charge. And so, well, if Republicans ran it, well, I'd still join it. Would you? How did it go in the Senate with the Republican majority? Not very well. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a Democrat thing. It's not a liberal thing. It's not a conservative thing. It is an unethical thing. That's the problem with the binding caucus. It is structural. That's why it needs to go away. And the answers that said, well, I would join it if it was a Republican, and depending who's in charge, that's why it's wrong. Because that's the issue, right? You're relying upon individuals to make it work. A great system can be destroyed by bad people. A bad system could be made to work if you had really good people. But why are you relying upon that? You rely upon the law, the structure that says we're not going to do that. And then you don't have to worry moving forward year after year. Is it going to fall apart? Is somebody going to come in and do things unethically? Are they going to take Republican colleagues and slaughter them and take their resources away? You don't do it because, oh, it may be okay. It might be working. Who's in charge? Oh, maybe. No, stop. Don't do it. Make it illegal. That's the issue. And I think that's something that people need to be considering when they say, well, I might join one. I go, why would you do that? Because you're depending. And then even if you get into it, we looked really good the first year or two last year in the Senate. How does it look now? Yeah. Not very good. Some of us were slaughtered for representing our district. The binding caucus, folks, needs to go the way of the dinosaur in this state. I have a question, because she said she gave me a little bit of room to talk. I do have one, okay? So, believe it or not. So she did say I can do this. That's why I got off the rant. But it's for the candidates, and I do think this one is very germane, because they've talked very succinctly about resources, development, taxes, etc., right? You want to know where your PFD went? And by the way, this goes back to binding caucus, but I'm not going to circle back on that one. Where'd your PFD go? Binding caucus. Okay. So taxes versus the PFD. A lot of folks are saying that. Want to have the statutory PFD. Check. Want to have no taxes. Check. Here's the problem. The little dirty secret in Juneau, and the question will go to these guys. Government is growing again, and it will continue to grow. And cooked into the books, the little dirty secret they won't tell you in Juneau. I saw a chart that was pushed out by Kathy Giesel, some of her constituents. It was sent to me today. And it said, look, the chart is going down. Look how much money we've cut. Well, they didn't talk about the fact most of the cuts were the capital budget, not operating. Operating budget's the virus. That's the one you can't get rid of. That's the one that grows year after year, right?
Amen.
People first, all that stuff, right? Capital, year after year, you can turn it on, you can turn it off, all right? And we took some things out of the budget, like in 2018. Remember, oh, we're under our cap that we just passed, statutory cap, because remember, we follow statutes so well, right? And they took the education funding out of it and said, look, we stayed under our cap. Oh, after you took out $1.2 billion of the budget, that's a little bit of a shell game, wouldn't you say? And she put on that chart 2020 proposed budget by the Senate, $4.3 billion. Sounds good. It looks slightly less than last year. A little secret? Didn't tell you this part? Oh, what about that extra $500 million we knew was coming with the largest supplemental in our history, and the $300 million we just added to the budget at the end of March while the private sector was getting decimated? We funded ourselves, and we gave ourselves a pay raise while you lost your jobs and your businesses. How are we doing? Not truth in advertising, folks. So my question for these candidates... Sorry, you guys know me. I'm on a roll. It's hard to stop. Yeah, anyways. So the question is this. Knowing that those things are going to happen, knowing the budget is going to go up no matter what, knowing that reductions to spending seem to be off the table, we're not even talking about it. The talk now is how do you fill that gap? We're at $4.8 billion right now, roughly. You got $150 million or so coming in next year. We're at a $5 billion budget. We're billions of dollars short. And I got news for you, folks, and this is the one that makes me laugh. The people in the wealthy districts think by taking the PFD, they're going to protect the wealthy and the businesses. Ha! I'm laughing at you. You're not using your brain because your taxes are coming anyways, folks. They're going to take the whole PFD, the size of this government's growing, the rate is growing, they're going to come for taxes anyway. So even the wealthy are going to get kicked in the rear and go, what the heck happened? Maybe you should have paid attention to what your representatives and senators have been doing for the last decade. So will these candidates or legislators, if they're back in office, as far as how taxes go versus the PFD, because everybody like to have it all, but I got news for you. The PFD is not It's a danger, folks. It's going to be irrelevant. And taxes are coming. That's the answer. Will each of these candidates or legislators vote to have taxes of any sort while we have no reductions on the table? In other words, are they going to vote to fill the gap? Because there was a tax that Click Bishop put in, the head tax for education, like $35 million ago. Woohoo! You didn't cap what we spent. You're not cutting a doggone thing. In fact, you're growing it, and we're just going to throw money at the problem. And that's what we're doing, folks. So I want to know if these folks are going to help us stop that by not voting for a single tax. I think I know what the answer will probably be, but I want to know what they're also going to do about those reductions. Are they going to go out there and say, yeah, I'm just going to help fill the gap, and I'm not going to reduce the cost of government? Because that's not what we're doing, folks. And they've even said it. If we don't reduce the budget, we're done. We're in big trouble. I know that's a long rant, Edna. You said I could talk for a little bit, so I did. But that question is very germane to me, because if we don't do that with everything else, we're in big trouble. And people don't know how bad this is going to get. But taxes are coming, folks. You just be standing by. With what we're doing, headed your way. Gotcha. Thank you, folks.
So I think the question is, before instituting taxes or taking your PFD, are you going to cut the budget? Is that the question?
Say again, sorry,
okay.
That way.
So I think the question is, before instituting taxes or taking a portion of your PFD, are you going to cut the budget? Was that the question?
Will you agree that taxes are not on the table unless reducing the size and cost of government is on the table while we are taking people's PFD?
Okay, I think I got the question. It is multi-part. And so the question is, will taxes even be on the table unless you cut the budget?
Pretty much.
Pretty much, okay. So I consider myself a budget hawk, and I know that we have to. We can look at our own family budget, and it's not a secret, and it shouldn't be a secret that we no longer can afford the budget we once had. We all enjoyed the ride. People don't want to hear it, but we don't have the money to do it. So no, we need to cut the budget. The things that we enjoy, we know that there are things that we can't afford to do. Before we institute taxes, personally, I'm not instituting income taxes. There's going to be the challenge. There's going to be people there that want income taxes. There's going to be people who want this kind of taxes. I want to institute income taxes. I'll cut the budget first.
Mike Schauer, I'm not going to vote for any new taxes. You know me, and I haven't before, and I won't again. I'm going to support a full PFD payout. We can do it. The money's there. It's in earnings reserve. I can show you how the numbers will work. We don't need new taxes. Why would we want to impose any new taxes in this state? It's just not needed. Again, we can go down the road of taking money out of people's pockets and saying, let's turning our resources into jobs. That has to be our focus. No, I'm not going to do new taxes. There is none need right now. What was your rest of it? Economic development?
Well, the last part that Mark did, and that's going to be the case, that we want to pay a full PFD and we're not going to have taxes, knowing where our spending is. What are our options? What are our gap? Because that's the thing, right? We have a gap.
Absolutely. I got it right here. I got it. You know, what are options? First off, we do need to continue reducing this budget. First, you know, we have these agencies, and we continue to try and reduce the amount of money going into those agencies, making them more and more inefficient. That's all we do. You can't do that. It's like a dog musher who, you know, was not doing good. You don't go out there and cut the feet off your dogs. You go out and you take a few dogs out. That's what we need to do at our state. Some of these state agencies and departments, we can sit there and try and reduce their budget. You just need to eliminate them. Get rid of them. You want it or not? If you're going to keep them, fund them. If not, get rid of them. That's how you get to that problem. There's over $14 billion now in the earnings reserve with excess money after the permanent funds paid out. Permanent fund dividend has averaged 10.74% since inception in '81. The money's there and it's continuing to grow again. That could put in the $1.9 billion for a full permanent fund dividend and up to $2 billion to supplement the budget because the oil revenues are down right now. We don't need the money, Mike. We don't need new taxes. We need time for the Dunleavy administration to go out there to talk to the public about what to do with the permanent fund dividend, what they want to do with it, and what we want to do with the constitutional spending cap. That's what I support.
As I said earlier in my message, I will oppose any and all new taxes. That is one of my core tenets I'm going to run on. As far as voting goes, and as far as other stuff like that, one of the things I see that we've done here in this state with certain legislators is we've set a very, very dangerous precedent. We said from certain leadership of the House and Senate, you're going to vote our way on this budget, or we're going to take people's PFD. So now what's going to happen every time they want something? Now they want more budget. Now they want more tax and income tax, whatever it may be. Are they going to keep threatening our PFD, and what, are we going to toe the line every time and surrender our vote? We have to have courage. We have to show and weed out who the bad people are in our legislature, who the bad rhinos are, who the bad Democrats are, and replace them. That has to be done through voting, and it has to be done through integrity of voting. If we don't have hand-counted ballots, and we don't have that integrity to know our votes count, a lot of this budgetary problems, a lot of the tax problems, even the PFD, people calling it a tax, it was not a tax. It was 100% confiscation, an ad hoc confiscation of money that belonged to the Alaskan people. So unless we can get people out through true integrity of our voting, we're just going to keep running uphill, guys. We're going to keep running uphill. So no, I will not support any taxes, period. But we have to safeguard stuff. We have to stand tall and have courage when we do make these votes.
Thank you for that question. Because we didn't talk about spending very much, we just alluded to it. A big thing that's not being talked about is what did we just do with the budget? We doubled it in the last 15 years. And so the question's not, how are we going to fill that gap? It's like, let's get rid of the gap. We have more state employees per capita than any other state. In fact, I think, I'm trying to remember the numbers. It was the next closest state is dramatically less than we have. The next highest, out of 50 states, the next highest per capita state for state employees is substantially less. I can't remember the number.
We have 23% state.
I think the next one is like 14%.
One employee for 88 residents.
It's obscene. And we've been lazy and we've been irresponsible with the people we've been sending to Juneau, who have grown this budget and have increased the size of the bureaucracies over and over again. We have to slash and burn. I mean, it sounds horrible, but that's essentially what we have to do. We have to cut back. And there's so much that government does that it's not really essential. It's not really part of the Constitution, even though they told us during COVID that they're essential, but our businesses are not. But anyways, I'll pass it on.
Yeah.
So no on new taxes. I'm not even talking about it until we go at least halfway.
So I think we have to have an important conversation about what the future of our state is going to be. And I don't think, as long as all the revenue effectively came from the North Slope, nobody really cared how we spent it. I mean, nobody spends somebody else's money with the same degree of caution that they spend their own. But going forward, it is money out of our pocket one way or another for every dollar that's spent. It's either coming out of the PFD or it's coming out of taxes. So we are going to have, we made a budget last year, we made a budget this year, we're going to make a budget next year. So the decision is, what is that budget going to look like? And anybody that tells you that on an ongoing basis, we're going to be able to pay out the full PFD, not have taxes, and not cut government is completely lying. I mean, you could probably do that for 2 years, but the CBR is gone and there's just the ERA left. So that is reality. One of those three things is going to have to happen. It's probably going to be a combination. And I'll tell you, I will not support an income tax. But if you can get a commensurate reduction in government services, I would not be opposed to an education head tax, as long as an actual cut to total government operating spending was as large or larger than the revenue that would be raised. I would see that as a net win. And I'll tell you why. It's because we are already paying, the spending is the tax. It is coming out of the ERA, which is the savings of the people of Alaska. So you're already paying a tax, you just haven't realized it yet, but it will come if we do not cut government.
So didn't Governor Walker already try to sell us on on a budget cut by 44% when it was just one portion of the budget? Didn't we call him out on that? I can't hardly believe that the Senate President is actually trying to sell us that line of crap again. So there is a large number of issues, monetarily wise, fiscally wise, in our state. The power cost equalization, $1.2 billion, 3 times what you need for the endowment that they're using it for. The pipeline property tax, where does all that money go? That's a huge issue that needs to be solved. There are a number of fiscal issues that need to be solved in this state, and they're not going to be solved without an inspector general. So to answer the question, I would vote no on any tax, even after we cut the budget. We have got to cut our budget. We have to get the fiscal house of Alaska under control. We're not going to do it without a spending cap. We need a spending cap. But we also need the legislature to stand up and do something about it, to pay attention. Maybe we need an accountability deal where when a department comes to the legislature and says, I need this much money, hey pal, how did you spend it last year? Give me your accountability. Show me what you spent it on last year, and maybe then we'll give it to you. If you don't show me, you don't get any money.
Thank you for the question. So the first thing I want to say is power has not changed hands. We changed some people in office last election cycle. Paul Seaton was one of those folks. He's not in the legislature anymore. But what happened? Democrats grabbed Jennifer Johnston, Chuck Kopp. Suddenly Paul Seaton was back, his little younger version. And all that to say, it's a lot easier to change the people out, myself included, in an election than it is to change the actual power that is controlling Juneau right now. Because they will run Republicans, they will run Democrats, they will run, and whatever they got to do, they will make sure they have the votes to maintain the current level of spending that special interests demand. Not ask for, not nicely, demand, and they will yell and they will scream, and they will call your phone at midnight, leave you nasty messages, and we've seen that. Unfortunately, legislators do not have a good track record, even Republicans, of saying no to the cuts, to actually saying we're going to make the cuts, actually saying we're not going to increase the taxes. And I'll give you one example and then I'll sit down, but I put up a number of amendments to the budget this year to cut the same cuts that we put in the budget last year, that the governor vetoed, that the Republicans sustained the veto on. And on some of those cuts, the same exact cut, I was the only one willing to state it because of the heat that some of us took. And if we do not have the wherewithal, as a combination, as a team of whoever gets elected, to say no to the special interest, to say someone that's been getting that dollar for the last 20 years, that next year they are not getting that dollar, and next year they are not holding that power, then you can add all the taxes you want. That dollar will continue to be spent. It will continue to go to the same general interest group. You will not solve the problem at all by raising the taxes. You raise the tax and they will want that much more.
And then Carolyn, you want to come up and then we'll take these. Yeah, come up and we'll just form a line.
That's good. You let people talk.
I don't know, should we take a vote?
Come on, guys, I come out here all the time.
Make a review or something?
Yes, go ahead.
$100 to everybody's campaign or something?
Yeah. And we had a great police rally in Anchorage today. Over 100 of us showed up. And they were all content. So we need to do the same. Anyway, I just wanted to say something. I've been around a long time. I've been involved in politics. I've listened to a lot of forums. I've listened to a lot of different people. And I need to tell you this. Everybody isn't Wasilla. I wish they were, but they're not. And you got a whole bunch of other people you got to work with in that legislature, whether you want to or not. Now, you can be firm on something, stand in the corner and get nothing done, or you can learn to negotiate, have relationships with people, and convince them that what you want to do is good. Because if you can't do that, we had 23 people that were Republicans last year. It wasn't all that just 2 went over. There were, in case you didn't, yeah, the question is, do you play well with others, and can you prove it?
Says the lady who plays well with to everybody.
Well, I think I have about the most proof you could have as of about, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I crossed the line, went over to Black Lives Matter and said, hey, told my own people, my pro-Second Amendment people, leave your guns at home. There's no reason to intimidate, but show up and make sure that things go smooth and hear their point of view. I sat there and listened. I prayed with these young kids. Told them how proud I was of them. The fact they were using their voice when all of us all the time complain. Our kids are on their phones too much. Our kids don't want to come out of their rooms. So to do that, I've proven it. And this is prior to this, 3 to 4 days prior to that, I was doxxed. My address was put online. I had threats to my family, to the home where my children live. And trust me, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I have a pretty good sense of humor. Not when you do something like that with me. But live is fine. And I moved on, and I did what was right. I got a lot of flack from my own people saying, what were you doing? I said, I told you before, if the Constitution does not apply to all, it does not, or excuse me, Constitution does not apply to all, it doesn't apply to any. I can play with anyone. I'm a good leader. I'm very, very well at, or do very, very well at explaining my purpose, explaining my my visions, and listening to other people's as well, and finding common ground. So, which way, left or right?
I don't care, whichever way you want to go.
Let's go this way, I guess.
Thanks, man. Yes, I can get along with folks. In fact, when I go talk to high school kids, when talking about government and such, you're generally asked, what's one of the things that you're most proud of your accomplishments as a legislator? And my pat answer is being able to walk into any office in Juneau, whether it's in the House or the Senate, Republican, Democrat, or the governor, and be welcome and be respected. And if you can do that, you'll be okay. If you can't get people to listen to what you have to say and be respected for that, then it's just not going to happen. But getting in the door and being able to have a voice is the most important thing you can do. But the most important thing you can do to have that is to keep your word. There's a little thing in Juneau, as you remember, that's all you got is your word. And there's people who seem to have forgot that recently. I certainly remember that. It's all you got is your word. I repeat it often. Thank you.
And yes, I can get along with others. I don't know if I was originally that way when I was born, but I'm the oldest of a large family, and let me tell you, I learned real quick how to get along with others.
That reminds me, Lynn, I'm actually the middle of 9, the epitome of the middle child. So getting along with others is something, you get used to. And I'm willing to talk to anybody, Democrat or Republican, and reason on the issues. Working in the pro-life movement is one of the most heated, vitriolic environments you'll find in politics. And, I'll sit down, I've sat down and talked with people who are the farthest extreme away from me. But I'm not running to represent Los Anchorage. And I'm running to represent Wasilla and Wasilla values. And one of the tricks they play is saying, well, you got to be nice, you got to vote with the majority, you got to vote together. And what it does is, if they're all doing something wrong together, it doesn't look like they're doing something wrong. Years ago, before Senator Schauer did this recent push on the binding caucus, we had Senator Reinbold stand up and vote no on the budget. And she embarrassed all the Republicans who were growing the budget because she did the right thing. And it sucks that she was the only one, but I have to be the only one I will. I don't want to be the only one. I want to build a coalition. As hard as I can, I'm going to work to build a coalition. But the reason we have the situation we have is because the politicians want power, not because they can't work together. People want power, and they will go where they get to get power.
Well, I think in business you learn pretty quick that you can be firm, but you should never be rude. That doesn't pay, and I think that the job of a legislature is very different from the job of an activist. If you act as an activist while you're in the legislature, you're going to isolate yourself. And every person that you piss off is somebody that you'll never be able to work with. Because people are petty even though they shouldn't be. On the borough assembly, I definitely have not been in the majority the entire time. But we have, and I don't take all the credit, but we have stopped a lot of relatively terrible proposals that came before us. There was proposed 1 mil property tax increase last year that didn't happen. This year we actually got a mill rate cut, both area-wide, and I will take credit for the non-area-wide one. So I think that you can work with people. It's cheap. Flattery is cheap. Building somebody's ego is cheap. It hurts me not one bit to let somebody else take credit, to to let somebody else think that they've done the right thing. It's not always about getting all the right people. Sometimes it's about convincing the wrong people to do the right thing. So you have to work with others.
Thanks. So thanks for the question, Judy. I think what you're talking about is without a binding caucus, we're going to have a way to build a coalition. We're going to have to, there cannot be any more of this sort of single lane or silos, 60 disparate opinions. You have to learn to work with people. As far as, and frankly, it comes down to leadership. There has to be a leader. So we have to elect the right leaders, whether it's the Speaker of the House, the majority leader, the minority leader. You have to elect the proper leader. And a good leader can put together a team of wildly different people and use them all at their strengths. So that's how they do it in every other legislative body in every other state in the country, apparently, as well as our nation. Mitch McConnell doesn't have a binding caucus. He puts together a caucus based on the strength of his word, on the strength of debate and rhetoric, and we have to get back to that. We have to get back to respectful, honorable debate where you do honor your word, where you work together, and where you create a caucus, not a binding caucus, but a group of, you coalesce into a group of people that can do something good for the people that you're supposed to represent. As far as me, my whole life has been about cooperation and leadership. 20 years in the military. I was an E7 when I retired. I had 40 mechanics working for me, and now as a 747, here comes Edna.
I love you, man.
As a 747 captain, one of the things that I do is shepherd air crews and airplanes throughout the world and wildly out in the boonies, and it takes leadership and it takes cooperation. So.
It was about playing well with others. So who are these others that we're talking about? I'll tell you, in a decade in the military, I got to play with a lot of others, and I enjoyed most of those experiences. Let's rewind to what happened last summer at a high school down the road when legislators were gathering according to the law, according to the government, according to state law. And you remember what happened when that gathering was invaded? Those are the others. Now, I happen to know every single one of the Black Lives Matter activists that jumped down into the gymnasium floor knew me personally by name. How did they know? Because before that event kicked off, I had already gone to everyone in the crowd and greeted them by name, introduced myself, wanted to figure out, all right, what's your story? Why are you here? Thanks for coming, and so forth. And that is part of my job as a legislator. It is to reach out and to try and understand where people are coming from. But let's not kid ourselves. We know how bad Juneau is. We know that Kathy Giesel wasn't on the radio saying what happened in Wasilla with that whole, Telephonic was a bad thing. Juneau sanctioned that. Juneau was perfectly okay with that. Juneau thought all of us legislators and the governor deserved what we got. Those are the folks that we are playing with. And if you think that you can go down to Juneau and be liked by those people and change Juneau, well, Juneau doesn't like to be changed. You gotta play with them, but you don't gotta like them, and they don't gotta like you.
Yeah, Judy, I don't know. Our council is split 4-3, as all of you know, and there's just some things you're not gonna change with them. Mail-in ballots, right? I mean, you have to take a strong stand, so we end up 4-3. 90% of our legislation is passed, but what you have to do, your convictions, if you're the only person standing or if you're the majority. So let's see, I think Carolyn, you were, and then
First, I would like to thank every one of you for sitting up here and putting yourself out. I'm not that brave, but I'm glad that other people are. My question concerns voter integrity, election integrity. It is a huge issue to a lot of folks. If we don't have the assurance that our vote counts the way we cast it, we have nothing. We have chaos. So my question to you is, do you support or not support mail-in ballots? And what are your thoughts on keeping our elections as secure as possible?
Hand it to anybody. Let them start.
So mail-in ballots. I read an article yesterday morning, in fact, that says the United States Postal Service cannot support mail-in ballots, period. Their failure rate with those type of mailings is like 80. Their production rate is 86%. So 14% failure rate. So how can 14%? How can we disenfranchise 14% of the voters? If it was me, I think an ink pot that you stick your thumb in to turn blue when you show up in person with an ID card to vote is the way to go. We're never going to get there, but I do not support mail-in ballot voting.
I got an email last week from the post office, and it was about the package that I mailed to myself from my dad's house in California back in December. Still haven't found it. It never left the California post office. It never got lost in the middle. It never got out of the post office. That's our postal system. Unfortunately, mail-in ballots is not going to solve the problems that we have. It might make some things easier, but make a whole lot of things a whole lot worse. I am for absentee ballots when people apply for them, and I would support the right to have that. I've used it many times myself. But mail-in ballots is an entirely different situation, which I do not support.
So we just stopped this mail-in ballot proposal down at the Borough Assembly. Thank you for everyone that came out and spoke. It would be a huge mistake to move to mail-in ballots. There's really no way to secure an election like that. You could just go down to the post office and load up on unwanted ballots from the trash can afterwards, or there's just multiple potential problems with that. And the biggest issue is mailing ballots to people that don't request them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with absentee ballots, but to just do a mass mailing to every dead person and out-of-state resident, what have you, that might happen to be on our bloated voter rolls, then that's going to be a problem. I do think that we need to address the voter rolls, though, in the state of Alaska. There's massive inflation in the amount of voters compared to the amount of actual residents. And that, while it may not have been exploited yet, it is a potential thing that can be exploited. But I've heard a lot of people talk about hand counts. I think that it's really important that if we do hand counts, that we not consolidate ballots all in one place, having a spread out by precinct count. Physical count is actually the most secure potential election system because you can't globally corrupt it easily.
I think I'm very deeply disturbed about the election integrity issue that came up recently. I knew we always had a risk. I didn't know it was a big problem until Brian Wendell did a lot of research on it. Thank you, Brian, for bringing it to our attention. I think 10, 15 years ago I was reading Alaska had 102% of Alaska's voting age population was registered to vote.
111.
And that was long before this massive glut of PFD registrations. So we have an extraordinary amount of people on the voting rolls. They're not Alaskans, or they're not alive, or they're not Alaskans, and they're not up here to vote. So during the Anchorage's first attempt at the vote by mail scheme, constant stories of people, honest people, bringing up the fact that they had received numerous ballots at their home for people that didn't live there. What about all the dishonest people? We know that the left loves to cheat. Let's not become Chicago. And so I endorsed Brian's proposal and Joe Miller's proposal, which would require that any campaign representative at the precinct level, I agree with Jesse, it needs to be separated out, can request a hand count there if they suspect something phishing. I think it's a good, really cheap, quick, safe, easy change right now. We can ensure election integrity is allowing people to ask for have the right to ask for a vote by hand count. Thank you.
Yeah, let's keep the answers started. It's already like, I think, 9:15. I think the restaurant closes like at 9:30, and we want to give everybody a chance to ask people. So just yes or no, please. I'm sorry.
I've already talked about this. I'm all for voter integrity.
No, I do not support mail-in ballot.
I don't support mail-in ballots, but I do support absentee ballots.
Okay. So we'll have your question, and then
election workers, but the industry are going to have a mail-in ballot because we don't have it. These guys.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pat Martin from Alaska Right to Life. And Christopher, thank you for the illustrious introduction of the most divisive movement there is in the United States of America, and it is that because the stakes are so high. So my question is very direct. It is, if you're seeking re-election, what specifically did you do in your last term to protect babies from being murdered? If you didn't propose legislation, why not? And then for the newer candidates, if you're running for office for the first time, how specifically do you intend to protect babies from being murdered?
Everybody here is sort of on a trust thing, so if you have your bill, you'll have to go out and pay for it. And please pay for it, because otherwise we as a club have to pay for it. So be sure and do that before you leave, okay? And we have also split the pot. So if you're not here, you will not be able to win. So just those acknowledged.
Personally, I've addressed that issue in all three branches this year and last year, and there were two bills we put forward, one to hold judges accountable when they try to rewrite the Constitution, to take the lives of the unborn, and then also in the legislature. And we have the opportunity to decide as legislators that we are going to actually move on limiting abortion in the state. And we haven't done that, and a lot of folks have given up, and we have no right, and they have every right to expect that we won't give up on it.
So I'm a Christian. I have always believed and will always believe that life begins at conception. I will support any bill that says that exact thing. Unfortunately, I love the thought behind the heartbeat bill, but it's never going to fly with Roe versus Wade and Dole versus Bolton on the books. And until we repeal that, a heartbeat bill is just going to, the day after we pass it, it's going to be in court with Planned Parenthood. So I think we have to stand up and we have to say life begins at conception. If you think about it, even the Democrats agree with that. They say that with evolution, that life began from a single cell amoeba that climbed out of the primordial ooze. So why is it that a baby in a woman's womb is not life? I am baffled.
Well, I think we should pass the heartbeat bill because I think we can pass the heartbeat bill. I think we should reform the judiciary system here in Alaska, and I think that Ginsburg is not long for this world. So let's get done what we can, and then we'll work on other things. The Democrats have. Well, okay, I won't continue.
This is kind of my wheelhouse. I've worked in the employment movement since before I was an adult, there's some angles we need to attack in the legislation. There's the privacy clause. I already mentioned that. I'm eager to work with David on the Life Conception Act, and of course reforming judiciary so that they're not constantly killing our pro-life efforts. But as well, one of the issues we talk about separation of power that really gets me is the funding issue. We're paying to kill kids in the state. We're bleeding at the seams with oversized budget, but we're taking money that we don't have to spend to kill kids. And when the legislature in the past has said, oh, we don't want to do that, the courts have come around and said, well, you got to do it anyways. And last I checked, in the Constitution, the legislative branch controls the purse strings, not the courts. And I'll tell you right now, my promise to you is I'm not going to roll over and say, oh, I passed a bill, but the court said we can't. No. If we have judges, and if somebody asked about something I wanted to mention earlier, I'll put legislation forward to impeach judges. I will put legislation forward to impeach judges. There's several things we can do on that front. It's really my top priority. There really isn't a more important issue than ending the most horrific, the greatest injustice in human history. There's not really a better way to describe it. The greatest injustice in all of human history is the genocide we perpetrate on our own people in the womb.
I'm firm on my stance of life begins at conception. I actually take great offense to the fact that my taxpayer dollars could actually go to funding it. That's wrong. It completely goes against my freedom of religion, the fact that I don't agree with it. And I think that's something we need to define in our Constitution and in our rights, that we don't need to fund Planned Parenthood, and we need to change the Constitution to read that life does begin at conception.
I absolutely and always will support the right of the lives of the unborn. I've offered amendments to reduce or to remove the funding for abortions out of the budget before, and I proudly have a picture of my grandson while he was still in the womb of my daughter right on the front of my desk where everybody who comes to my office can see it, with a sign that says, a little picture that says, I don't know, under construction or something like that. But it's my beautiful grandson with his beautiful smile looking at the world. The rights of the unborn need to be protected.
I don't know if I'm short or this isn't long.
Both.
I basically agree with all the other folks here. Some of the bills that I've done and amendments that I've done is try to keep Planned Parenthood out of our schools. And I sponsored that on the House side with the governor, who was then the senator on the Senate side. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that we can do that I think can pass. And some of those things are how we sponsor or we fund places like Heart Reach and places that do counsel folks to try to keep their babies. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I think that those are some of the ways as well.
Let's give all of our candidates a round of applause. We appreciate it. We couldn't put the program on without you. Next month, we will have our Senate candidates, and it would be a pretty short list if Senator Wilson hadn't accumulated like, what, 5 opponents or something? So anyway, that, and, you know, I don't know if they'll all show up or not, but anyway, that's what our plan is. And I just want to thank Kathy for being the timer. You know, don't blame her. It was me telling her how much minutes to give, and so Kathy has split the pot. You want to come and have somebody, and then Janet Johnson is our treasurer, and she'll collect your money. If you haven't paid your dues, or if you'd like to join and be a part of what we're doing, we would appreciate that also.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here tonight. This has been a wonderful, outstanding candidate forum, getting to meet the different candidates. I appreciate that we have Alex here that showed up on Facebook Live with us tonight. Understand that you had to work. You did an awesome job with what you had written in. Don't hesitate to share. Facebook squeals on you if you don't share. Pay particular attention if you rewatch this video to the answers given about the binding caucus, and then fast forward to where Senator Shower came up and what he had to say. There is definitely some things there that is well worth paying attention to. Again, thank you all for joining us here tonight. As the forums keep coming forward, I plan on live streaming them all. And 4th of July, we have our own party that is happening at Wonderland Park in Wasilla. It will begin at 11 o'clock. It will end at noon. Don't hesitate to come on out. All the food is free. It is a potluck. Bring your food with you. We will have food there. Donations are always appreciated. We're going to have sound systems and everything else. Thanks again for joining us.